You know, we often think a democracy dies with some huge, explosive event, right? A bang. But what if it's quieter than that? What if it's more like a playbook, a methodical, step-by-step guide for slowly, quietly unraveling a country from the inside? Well, today we're going to walk through that exact playbook. So, how does it actually happen? The source material we're looking at is really clear on this. It's almost never one single dramatic moment. It's a slow, calculated process. Think of it like erosion. Exactly. Not a sudden collapse, but an erosion. It's this slow, deliberate chipping away at the foundations of a democracy. And a lot of the time, it's happening right out in the open. Now, this playbook seems to unfold in four distinct phases, and each one builds on the last. It starts in the mind by sowing distrust. Then it moves to the state itself to capture the institutions. From there, it targets all of society with control and fear. And finally, the end game. Lock in that power and make the changes permanent. Let's break down each step. All right, phase one, this is all about laying the psychological groundwork. And the goal here isn't really to win an argument, it's to shatter the very idea of truth, to leave citizens so confused and cynical that they just don't know what to believe anymore. The very first tactic is to just flood the public square with falsehoods and conspiracies. The source material is clear. The goal isn't to make you believe the lies. No, it's to exhaust your ability to tell truth from fiction until you basically just give up. That confusion, that's the real weapon. And just look at the sheer scale of this. I mean, we're not talking about a few little mistakes here and there. The source points to documentation of over 30,000 false or misleading claims from just one leader. That's not just lying. That's a deliberate strategy. It's about overwhelming the truth with a fire hose of noise. So while you're flooding the zone with disinformation, you also have to attack any institution that might call you out on it. By labeling the press the enemy of the people, you're not just criticizing their coverage, you're trying to delegitimize the entire concept of an independent watchdog. So, once public trust is shaky, the playbook moves to phase two, capturing the actual machinery of the state. This is all about hollowing out the very institutions that are designed to keep power in check. Let's take the justice system, for example. In a healthy democracy, it's supposed to be a neutral arbiter, right? But in this playbook, it gets turned into a weapon, something you use to punish your critics and protect your allies. The building might look the same, but its entire purpose gets flipped on its head. And this goes right to the top of the system. The source highlights this one specific example of direct pressure on an election official, pressure to simply find enough votes to change a result. I mean, the Senate report's conclusion that this was a near-miss constitutional crisis, that just shows you how fragile these norms really can be. Okay, this next move is a little more subtle, but it is so crucial. The civil service, the nonpartisan experts who are supposed to serve the country, not just one political party. Well, the Schedule F plan was designed to completely gut that idea. It would have allowed a president to fire tens of thousands of these career experts and just replace them with political loyalists. That's a huge shift, right? It's moving from a government run by expertise to one that runs on pure obedience. So after shaking public trust and starting to capture institutions, phase three turns outward, toward the public itself. The goal now becomes enforcing compliance through intimidation and, frankly, fear. A key tactic here is cultivating these kinds of extra-legal groups. The source points to that phrase, stand back and stand by, not as a condemnation of a group like the Proud Boys, but as a signal. It creates this sense that there's a loyal, violent force on standby, ready to be activated, and that has a really chilling effect on political opponents. And this goes way beyond just signals. By actively praising people who commit political violence, calling them patriots, and promising them pardons, a leader can start to normalize what was once totally unthinkable. Suddenly, violence stops being a failure of the political process and becomes just another tool you can use within it. And that brings us to the final and maybe the most critical phase, locking it all in. This is the end game. It's designed to make the shift in power irreversible and to make sure the leader can't be held accountable. You see, the attempt to overturn the election wasn't just one desperate act. It was a systematic process. As the source shows, it was this multi-pronged effort built on years of groundwork, from discrediting the process way in advance to directly pressuring officials to trying to corrupt the final certification. This right here is the attempt to place the leader above the law itself. I mean, claiming the Constitution can be terminated or that a president has total immunity, that's a fundamental attack on the rule of law. It's an attempt to rewrite the entire game. And you gotta remember, none of this happens in a vacuum. The source highlights how modern authoritarians are learning from each other, forming this kind of, autocracy Inc. They echo each other's propaganda, they praise fellow strongmen, and they work together to undermine the international alliances that are built on democratic values. So after walking through this entire playbook, what's the ultimate takeaway here? What's the bottom line? In the end, it really boils down to this. This playbook works not just because of what a leader does, but because of what citizens don't do, because of the inaction of people who see it happening and just stay silent. Look, a democracy isn't some machine that just runs on its own. It requires constant defense from its citizens. And the warning from our source material is pretty stark. Once freedoms are lost, they are incredibly difficult, if not impossible, to ever win back. And that leaves us with one heck of a final question. The source material we've just walked through, it lays out the entire strategy, plain as day, for everyone to see. So if the playbook for dismantling a democracy is public knowledge, the real question becomes, what's the playbook for defending one?